Super. Hi. As John mentioned, I'm a Community Foundation groupie, so I'm particularly delighted to be here with a group of people assembled by an organization that is really a unique force in your community. And, you know, as Lori was talking when she started, she was talking about taking on roles that are really vital to this community that might be a little bit messy, and I would add awfully audacious. But that's what most communities need. And so, you know, I'm honored to be here with you all. I'm going to talk about the concept of collective impact, which is something my organization has been working on for 4 or 5 years now, and we have learned volumes from the experts that you all have assembled here in the room. So, you know, thank you to Willa for setting the stage and talking about some of what this is, and really listen to the folks that you all have invited here, because they are truly some of the most interesting leaders on this concept of collective impact. So I'm going to go a little bit personal and talk to you about why I think it's important to add collective impact to your toolkit, you know, to your choice of mental models for how you approach social change. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the mindset that it requires. You know, this is fascinating, challenging, emotional, different kind of work, and it makes it really exciting. It creates lots of possibilities. It's also a little bit different from how you might typically operate in your community. And personally, it's important to me because I've played lots of roles in my life and have tried to contribute to social change in a lot of different ways. You know, I've lived in rural communities, working with kids, where, you know, the kind of place where you pick up your mail at the general store. And I've hoped that running summer programs and teaching kids how to swim and getting them library cards will really make a difference in their life. And I've worked with passionate community grassroots nonprofits who seem like they can do anything and really have a transformative impact on families' lives. But you can't bottle that, right? That doesn't go to scale. I've worked with brilliant funders with incredibly crisp strategies, people who work really hard to find the right place to leverage their resources and their influence, but it's not quite enough. You know, I've worked with collaboratives that are sometimes an unnatural act, but often more than that, and, you know, have achieved important things, but don't quite always know where they're going together collectively. And if you guys have had any of those kinds of experiences, give me a little murmur or a applause, or, you know, does any of that sound familiar, right? Yeah. It's all incredibly important work, right? It all needs to happen. But what collective impact is about is thinking about what else is possible if we change our mental model. So we start with this question: what keeps us from making change better, faster, larger? Where is that progress that we seek? And we care about lots of issues, right? This isn't specific to education. It's not specific to Cradle to Career. Environment, health, poverty. And we typically think, right, that it's a lack of resources, or it's a lack of public will, right? Or it's about the human capital and the expertise and the capacity that we bring to the issues, right? And those can be barriers for sure. And deploying those resources in the right way is incredibly important. But what we also see is that this is what the work in the community looks like, right? A lot of us are moving towards goals. We're moving in certain directions that on their own make tons of sense, right? But when you add them up, it looks like this. I was talking with a funder last week who works at a national level, and he said that his staff did an analysis of the 50 largest metro markets in the country. And what they found, they care about college access and success. What they found was that across these 50 communities, there were somewhere between 6 and 14 different collaboratives going on at once. You know, many, many different efforts aiming towards the same big goal, but looking kind of like this. So with collective impact, we ask ourselves, what would it look like if isolated impact became collective impact? What if we were all moving in the same direction in one sense or another? Looks pretty cool, right? What's the possibility of that? What does that take? What do we need to think about in order to achieve that? So I really like this. These are starlings.
And then, when the moment is right, they behave in a way that should be impossible.
How do they do this? I once saw starlings go into a chimney together. What makes that possible, right? And people way smarter than most of us in the room that, study these birds, study the behavior of flocking, say that it's rules of engagement. So what are rules of engagement for flocking? Travel at the same speed as your neighbor. Maintain a minimum distance from your neighbor and all other objects, right? And always turn toward the center. That's so cool. And if you actually, you can kind of try this exercise at home with large groups of your friends, and get in a group and move around and see if you can flock. But what you guys are trying to do in this community is a little bit like flocking. But we're not birds. We have perhaps a higher opinion of what we can achieve. And so when we talk about collective impact and the mindset for collective impact, Willa described a lot of different conditions for what coming together and doing this work requires. And we have a really similar way of characterizing those things. And the way that we think of these conditions is that they are rules for engagement. So what's the first? A common agenda. As Willa mentioned, a vision. What brings us together? How do we understand together what the challenges and opportunities are in our community? How do we think about that? How do we define shared measures that really give us some place to aim together and give us a way to have learning and accountability? And Willa mentioned a lot of great things around that. How do we have mutually reinforcing activities? How do we make sure that we're understanding one another and moving in a direction that reinforces one another rather than works at cross purposes or duplicative efforts? Continuous communication. How do we have continuous communication? This is really hard, but it's essential. How are we in touch enough with one another so that we can work and move together as one another moves towards the same direction? How do we flock? And having a backbone organization, having a resource in the community that gives us a way to coordinate, that facilitates our work, that helps with that continuous communication and the shared measurement. There's a lot that we need to bring all of our resources and power and influence and passion together in order to hopefully achieve something tremendous. And this feels really different. I said we're going to talk about the mindset and sort of how this feels and what we need to think about. This is different from other kinds of collaboration. Lots of collaboration can be valuable, and there's lots of it going on. Collective impact is of a different quality. It's different from social sector networks. It's different from multi-stakeholder initiatives. We're working toward the same thing. It's different from a public-private partnership. It's different from a funder collaborative, right? It's different because it has more of these elements of collective impact, those 5 things, It has more structure to help us have the rules for engagement. And so it feels different. What are the other things that we need to recognize in ourselves as we move toward addressing really complex challenges in a way that makes the best use of our resources collectively? And Willa talked about this. This is a really important concept. Collective impact isn't for when we have a technical problem to solve. It's for when we have an adaptive problem to solve, where we don't know the answer. If it's a technical problem, we can marshal our resources and expertise and be a little bit more linear about things. We can have confidence that we will achieve the result that we are seeking. With adaptive problems, we need to recognize that we don't know yet what we don't know. We also need to recognize there's no silver bullet. This is related, right? We all want a silver bullet. We have so many problems, and it must be out there if we could just learn more, have more expertise, or have the right people. But really, we have silver buckshot. It's going to take a lot of things. I heard your questions this morning talking about some of the educational opportunities and challenges in this community and all the different things that we need to touch on in order to make a real difference. That's what we need to think about. That's our mindset that we need to have. And importantly, we need to care more about credibility than credit. This feels really different. We need to have humility in the face of the challenges that we're working to address, and we need to know it's about the effort and the results, and not about what one individual strategy can achieve, or what one individual organization can achieve, or what one individual leader can achieve. And that's what it really takes for people to come together and pursue this kind of work. So the other thing I'll say is that this feels like you are living with paradox. And I'm going to go quickly, but I want to leave these things on your mind for you to think about. You want to move toward your social objectives with both structure and flexibility. There are going to be surprises, but you need structure. You want to have speed. These are urgent issues in your community, but you also want to be inclusive, and that takes time. You want to pursue the short and long term. Both things matter. It's not about either or. And you want to balance cooperation and competition. Both things are important in getting things done. Both things matter in doing this work together. So I'll leave you with the thought, question. Could it happen here? We know it's happened elsewhere. And it's happened on lots of issues. Youth substance abuse prevention, huge changes in the reduction of substance abuse in communities. Workforce development, huge job creation when a community comes together and has a long-term commitment to a common goal. Huge results in healthcare and a decrease in obesity in certain communities. And as you heard, we've looked across different kinds of communities and seen that this can happen. It is possible. And for those times when sometimes you look at how intractable the social problems are in your community and think, this is insurmountable. Remember that there are ways of working that we have seen in communities across the US, and believe that there are exciting and unprecedented ways to approach this. And you'll hear from some of your colleagues from across the country about some of their work, and be inspired. Thank you.